The morning of the visit began with a soft golden light spreading across the royal guard stables. The horses were already awake, shifting gently in their stalls as the stable hands moved through the aisles with buckets, brushes, and quiet greetings. Everything felt calm, as if the animals sensed that the day would be special. The royal guard stables were usually a place of discipline and training, filled with the rhythmic sounds of hooves, commands, and routines. But today, there was a different kind of preparation happening. The staff had been told that a group of special needs children would be coming for a guided tour, and everyone wanted to make sure the experience would be warm, comfortable, and memorable. The stable manager, a soft-spoken woman named Clara, reviewed the checklist one last time. She reminded her team to keep noises low, to move slowly, and to speak gently around the guests. The horses chosen for close interaction were the calmest, most patient ones, particularly Atlas and Rowan. Both were tall, elegant horses, with kind eyes and a quiet dignity about them. Atlas was older and experienced, while Rowan was younger, but naturally affectionate. The two horses stood side by side, as if discussing something silently. Their ears flicked back and forth, listening to the soft movements around them. They did not know exactly what was planned, but animals sometimes understand more than humans expect. Meanwhile, far beyond the stables, a small bus rolled along the road toward the Royal Guard grounds. The group inside included a mix of children with different needs and abilities. Some were excited, bouncing in their seats and staring out the window. Others were quiet, nervous, or unsure about what the day would bring. Their teachers and caregivers tried to prepare them, speaking softly and describing the horses they would meet. One teacher, Miss Elena, explained how gentle the horses were and how carefully the staff had planned the visit. She held the hand of a boy who often felt overwhelmed in new places. His name was Liam, and although he loved animals in pictures, the idea of meeting such large creatures made him anxious. He leaned against the window, watching trees pass by, trying to imagine the stables. Another child, a cheerful girl named Mira, clapped her hands every time someone mentioned horses. She used a wheelchair, and although her body did not always move the way she wished, her smile had a way of lighting up any room. She had been looking forward to the trip for days. Every evening, she had asked her mother how many hours were left until the visit. She imagined brushing a horse's soft mane or feeling its warm breath on her hand. Her excitement helped others feel more comfortable, and some of the more nervous children relaxed because of her joyful energy. When the bus finally turned through the gates and approached the stables, the children pressed their faces to the windows. The large buildings, the open fields, and the well-groomed horses walking outside filled them with both curiosity and wonder. For many of them, it was the first time they had seen real horses so closely. When the bus came to a stop, the staff members waiting outside greeted everyone with bright smiles and open hearts. As the children stepped off the bus one by one, some held tightly to their caregivers' hands. Others took brave steps forward, scanning the surroundings. The stable staff had placed small signs and colorful ribbons to guide the group inside, hoping the friendly touches would reduce any feelings of fear. Clara welcomed the children warmly, telling them that they were free to ask any questions and that the horses were very happy to meet them. Inside the stables, the atmosphere had been carefully prepared. The lights were soft, the paths were clear, and faint music played from a small speaker just enough to create a peaceful environment. The horses stood quietly in their stalls, shifting gently, their tails swishing slowly. They seemed to sense the delicate emotions of the children entering the space. Liam, still holding tightly to Miss Elena's hand, took careful steps inside. His eyes widened at the sight of the first horse he saw, a tall gray one with a white patch on its forehead. The horse lowered its head slightly, watching Liam with gentle curiosity. But Liam felt uncertain. He pulled back a little, unsure if he wanted to get too close. Miss Elena reassured him that no one would make him touch a horse unless he wanted to. The stable staff respected that completely. They knew that comfort and trust took time. While Liam hesitated, Mira's excitement grew. She leaned forward, trying to catch the attention of anyone who could bring her closer to the horses. A stable hand named Thomas approached with a warm smile and asked if she would like to meet Rowan first. Mira nodded enthusiastically, and Thomas guided her wheelchair slowly down the aisle. Rowan, the younger of the two gentle horses, noticed her from a distance. His ears perked forward, and he took a slow step closer to the stall door, as if eager to greet her. When Mira reached Rowan, her face softened with awe. Rowan lowered his head carefully, making sure not to startle her. Mira lifted her hand with some effort, and Rowan gently pressed his muzzle against her palm. A soft laugh escaped her as she felt the horse's warm breath. For a moment, she forgot about her wheelchair, her worries, and the challenges she faced daily. She simply existed in a moment of pure connection. On the other side of the stable, Atlas watched everything with a calm, thoughtful expression. He was known for sensing emotions remarkably well. When he noticed Liam standing shyly behind Miss Elena, he understood something unspoken. Slowly and gracefully, Atlas lowered his head and leaned slightly forward, but he did not step too close. Instead, he stayed still, giving Liam the space he needed. The quiet gesture caught Liam's attention. He peeked from behind Miss Elena and saw Atlas's large, patient eyes, waiting without pressure or expectation. This small act changed something inside Liam. He did not step forward right away, but he stopped pulling backward. He observed the horse more closely, noticing its soft breathing and gentle posture. Miss Elena whispered that Atlas seemed to like him. Liam did not respond with words, but he nodded slowly, still processing the moment. Atlas did not move, as if he understood that too much might frighten the boy. The stable staff watched quietly, careful not to interrupt this natural, delicate exchange. As the tour continued, the children grew more comfortable with the environment. The initial nervousness began melting away like morning fog. The horses remained calm, showing patience beyond what even the staff expected. It almost seemed as if they had planned their own way of welcoming the children. Each gesture, thoughtful, gentle, and perfectly timed. The connection between horses and humans began forming even before any of the planned activities started. The stable was filled with soft sounds. The quiet clip of hooves shifting, the gentle brushing of tails against legs, the whispering voices of children gaining confidence, and the warm laughter of caregivers who felt relief seeing their children relax. For some of the kids, this visit was more than a fun outing. It was a rare moment of discovering a place where they felt accepted and understood. By the time the group gathered for the first demonstration, the mood had changed completely. The fear some of the children carried when they arrived had faded. What remained was curiosity, excitement, and a sense that something magical was unfolding within the stable walls. And the horses, especially Atlas and Rowan, seemed ready to play a special role in what would become a day none of them would ever forget. The first moments of meeting the horses were filled with a quiet kind of magic. As the children slowly spread out along the stable aisle, the horses seemed to respond to each new movement with calm curiosity. The air was warm and smelled of hay, wood, and the soft, earthy scent of the horses themselves. Sunlight filtered through the open windows, making the dust particles dance like tiny stars. Everything felt peaceful, almost like the stable itself was welcoming the children. Atlas, the older horse with wise eyes, remained near the front of his stall. He watched the children with a gentle expression, his ears flicking lightly every time someone spoke or laughed. He sensed their emotions, the excitement, the nervousness, the uncertainty, and, in his own calm way, he tried to make himself appear safe and friendly. Years of working with the Royal Guard had made him disciplined, but he also had a tender nature that came out around people who needed comfort. Rowan, on the other hand, showed his friendliness more openly. When Mira brushed her fingertips over his muzzle earlier, he had felt something warm in her presence. Now, as she reached up again with the help of Thomas, Rowan gently pushed his nose closer, almost like a greeting hug from a horse. Mira's soft giggle echoed down the aisle, and her joyful sound brought smiles to the faces of both the staff and the other children. A boy named Aaron, who rarely spoke unless he felt very safe, took a small step closer to watch Rowan interact with Mira. He was fascinated by the horse's huge size yet calm behavior. Aaron kept his hands tucked behind his back, unsure if he wanted to try touching a horse himself. Thomas noticed him and offered a kind smile, telling him he could watch for as long as he wanted. Aaron nodded and stayed near Mira's wheelchair, observing every gentle move Rowan made. Nearby, Clara encouraged the children to take their time. She explained that horses communicate through their bodies, not words. If a horse lowered its head, it often meant it trusted the person nearby. If its ears were pointed forward, it was curious and interested. Clara spoke warmly, using simple words so every child could understand. Liam listened from a short distance away. He stood close to Miss Elena, still unsure whether he wanted to get near a horse. Even though Atlas had already tried to make a friendly gesture earlier, Liam's senses were still overwhelmed. The sounds, the large animals, and the unfamiliar place made him feel mixed emotions. He wanted to be brave, but his heart beat quickly whenever a horse moved too suddenly. Atlas sensed Liam's hesitation. The wise horse remained perfectly still, lowering his head once again, but this time, even more gently. He did not step closer. Instead, he offered his presence calmly, letting Liam approach at his own pace. Miss Elena noticed this and whispered softly to Liam, telling him that Atlas was showing kindness. She did not push him. She simply reminded him that the horse liked him. A girl named Tia, who loved drawing, held a small sketchbook close to her chest. She usually expressed herself through pictures rather than words. She asked Clara if she could draw the horses instead of touching them right away. Clara happily agreed and guided her to a safe spot where she could sit on a small bench. From there, she could see both Atlas and Rowan clearly. Tia opened her sketchbook and began drawing with quick, careful strokes. The horses seemed to sense her quiet focus, and they remained calm, giving her a perfect view. While Tia sketched, another child, Jonah, approached one of the smaller horses named Willow. Willow was a chestnut-colored mare with a gentle personality. She was known for her patience, especially with children. When Jonah reached out timidly, Willow lowered her head so he could touch her forehead more easily. His hand trembled at first, but when he felt her warm, velvety skin, he smiled widely, his earlier shyness melting away. The stable hands kept a watchful but relaxed eye on every interaction. They wanted the children to feel free to explore while also staying safe. Some staff members held small buckets of treats, crunchy vegetables, and horse-friendly snacks ready to help with guided feeding. But they waited until the children seemed ready for that next step. Rowan, always eager to make friends, nudged Thomas lightly, as if asking if he could meet more children. Thomas laughed softly and led Rowan out of the stall with steady hands. The children gasped softly as Rowan stepped into the aisle, towering yet gentle. He walked slowly, keeping his head low to avoid startling anyone. For many of the children, it was the first time they had been so close to such a large animal without any barrier. Mira reached out instinctively, and Rowan moved close to her again, resting his head near her shoulder. Mira's eyes sparkled with delight. The touch was comforting, like connecting with an old friend. Other children watched this moment with awe. Some took small steps closer, encouraged by Rowan's soft behavior. Aaron stood only a few feet away. He watched Rowan's steady movements, noticing how the horse never made sudden gestures. Thomas invited Aaron to touch Rowan's neck, but the boy shook his head slowly. However, he did not step away. He simply needed more time, and Thomas respected that completely. Meanwhile, Atlas continued watching Liam. The horse blinked slowly, a sign of relaxation, and lowered his head until his nose nearly touched the ground. This time, Liam took a small step forward. His heart raced, but curiosity grew stronger. Atlas remained motionless, giving Liam full control. When Liam finally extended one small hand, he kept it halfway in the air, unsure if he wanted to complete the motion. Atlas slowly exhaled through his nose, letting out a soft, warm breath. That simple sound soothed Liam. With a tiny bit more courage, he stretched his hand farther until his fingertips brushed Atlas's muzzle. The moment was brief, but it felt like a huge achievement. Liam quickly stepped back afterward, but he was not frightened, only surprised by what he had done. Miss Elena praised him softly, telling him how brave he had been. Liam stared at his hand in amazement, realizing he had touched a real horse. This moment caught the attention of some of the other children, who clapped gently for Liam. Their quiet support made him smile shyly, a rare sight that made Miss Elena's eyes water with pride. Slowly, the stable filled with more and more signs of comfort. Laughter echoed lightly, footsteps softened, and the children started moving more freely. Some fed the horses tiny treats under guidance, their faces lighting up when the horses nibbled from their palms. Others simply walked up and down the aisle, enjoying the calm presence of the animals. Even the horses that were not directly interacting with the children behaved unusually gently. It was as if Atlas and Rowan's calm energy spread to all the others, creating a stable-wide atmosphere of peace. The staff exchanged surprised glances, quietly amazed at how naturally the horses were responding. As the children grew more confident, the horses grew even gentler, almost as though they understood that the visitors needed kindness more than anything else. These first moments of connection were slow, patient, and deeply touching. They set the tone for the rest of the visit, opening a doorway to trust, warmth, and quiet understanding between the children and the horses. The warm and peaceful mood inside the stable grew stronger as the visit continued. The horses seemed to understand exactly what the children needed, and their gentle reactions surprised even the experienced staff. What happened next felt almost magical, as if the animals were showing a level of kindness no one had expected. The grooming demonstration was planned as one of the main activities for the children. Clara gathered everyone in a small, open area at the center of the stable, where soft mats had been placed on the ground. Brushes, combs, and gentle grooming tools were lined up neatly on a table. The children formed a semicircle around the space, some sitting quietly, some leaning forward with excitement. Thomas brought Rowan forward again, because he had already shown such a natural connection with the children. The horse walked calmly into the center, his steps slow and careful. Every child's eye followed him. His large body moved with surprising softness, like he understood he needed to be extra gentle today. Thomas stood beside him, holding a soft brush. To groom a horse, Thomas explained in a warm voice, you move the brush in small circles. Horses enjoy it, just like a gentle massage. He demonstrated the motion on Rowan's shoulder. Rowan closed his eyes halfway, enjoying the soft strokes. Some of the children giggled at the expression on the horse's face. Clara invited the children to come closer if they wanted to try brushing. Several stepped forward bravely, while a few stayed back, watching with curiosity. Mira raised her hand and asked if she could try too. Thomas smiled and nodded, guiding her wheelchair carefully closer. Rowan reacted instantly to her presence, lowering his head as if saying hello again. His gentle greeting made Mira glow with happiness. Thomas placed a brush in her hand, helping her angle it correctly. She reached out, but even with her determination, her arm did not stretch high enough to reach Rowan's tall shoulder. For a moment, she looked disappointed, thinking she might not be able to take part like the others. But then something remarkable happened. Rowan, noticing her struggle, seemed to understand her difficulty. Without any command, he slowly shifted his weight, and bent his long neck and body downward. He lowered himself just enough for Mira's hand to reach him comfortably. The staff gasped softly. This was not a trained action. Rowan had decided on his own. The brush in Mira's hand finally touched Rowan's smooth coat. Her face shone with a joy that words could not describe. She brushed him gently, one stroke at a time, while Rowan stayed perfectly still, his eyes soft and calm. Some of the children clapped quietly, touched by the sight. Even those who were scared before felt braver seeing how kind the horse was. This moment inspired the other horses nearby. It was as if Rowan's act of kindness sent a calm signal through the stable. Willow leaned her head out of her stall to greet Jonah, who was watching from a distance. Another horse, a tall bay mare named Luna, lowered her head toward a girl who was standing shyly behind her older brother. Luna's slow, peaceful movements made the girl step forward and touch her nose gently. The stable felt different now. The horses were forming small circles around the children, letting them approach without fear. Even Atlas, usually very calm but not overly expressive, stepped to the edge of his stall and lowered his head toward Liam again. But this time, Atlas did more. He extended his neck slightly and kept his eyes soft and half-closed, showing trust and patience. Liam noticed this change. His earlier fear had faded into curiosity, and now he felt something warm growing in his chest. He looked at Miss Elena, who encouraged him quietly. This time, Liam walked closer without being guided. He held out his hand again, more confidently than before. Atlas leaned forward just the right amount and let Liam touch his muzzle for a bit longer this time. When Liam pulled his hand back, he looked proud, really proud. Miss Elena hugged him gently, and Liam smiled in a way he rarely did. Atlas seemed pleased, too. He lifted his head slightly and blinked slowly, the horse version of a peaceful smile. Meanwhile, the grooming demonstration continued. Clara asked if anyone else wanted to try brushing. A boy named Daniel stepped forward. He had difficulty controlling his hand movements sometimes, so he was nervous about accidentally dropping the brush. Thomas guided him carefully, keeping Rowan still. Daniel's brush strokes were uneven at first, but Rowan didn't react negatively. He stayed calm, letting Daniel try again and again until he found a steady rhythm. Aaron, who had been watching closely from the side, took a slow step forward. His eyes were fixed on Rowan. He didn't speak, but his body language showed he wanted to try. Thomas noticed him and offered the smallest, softest brush, knowing Aaron preferred gentle textures. Aaron accepted the brush and stood beside Rowan, staying quiet. He reached out ever so slowly until the brush touched Rowan's coat. He didn't move the brush at first. He just held it there, feeling the warmth of the horse's body beneath it. Then, very carefully, he made the smallest brushing motion. Rowan lowered his head again, almost encouraging him. Aaron brushed a little more, each stroke smoother than the last. He didn't look up, but his shoulders relaxed, and his breathing became calm. It was a moment of deep concentration and comfort. In another corner of the stable, a small group of children began feeding treats to the horses under the supervision of 2 staff members. They held out flat palms with small pieces of carrot or apple. The horses gently picked up the treats with their lips, surprising the children with how soft and delicate their touch was. Laughter filled the air, brightening the entire space. At one point, all the children were engaged, brushing, feeding, touching, sketching, or simply watching. The horses remained patient and kind, adjusting their movements to match the comfort level of each child. It felt almost as if the animals understood that this group needed something special, something slow, gentle, and full of heart. Clara watched everything with deep emotion. She had worked with horses her entire life, but she had never seen them behave with such unified softness toward a group of strangers. She whispered to Thomas, "It's like they're teaching us today." Thomas nodded. "I think they know." he said quietly. "They can feel something we can't." As the grooming activity came to an end, Rowan raised his head slowly and shook out his mane. But even that movement was soft, as if he didn't want to disturb anyone. Mira reached out one last time, brushing his neck affectionately. Rowan touched his nose to her hand before stepping back, a gesture that felt like a goodbye hug. The children gathered back in a circle, smiling, holding brushes, feeding treats, or showing each other their favorite moments. The stable was filled with warmth, not just physical warmth, but the kind that comes from shared happiness and unexpected kindness. What the children experienced during these moments was far more than simple grooming or feeding. They had witnessed kindness in a form they had never imagined, large, gentle animals bending themselves to meet them exactly where they were. The horses, without speaking a single word, had given each child something precious: confidence, comfort, and a feeling of being understood. It was clear to everyone that this was not just a regular visit. It was a day filled with small miracles, miracles carried by the quiet kindness of horses. The stable felt different now, as if the air itself had turned warmer and brighter. Something inside the children had changed, and the horses seemed to sense it. The earlier quietness began to shift into soft excitement. Smiles spread across faces that had been nervous when the day began, and the children moved with more confidence, as if the stable had become a safe world they belonged in. Clara gathered the group again for the next activity, but this time she did not need to encourage them as much. Earlier, many of the children had hesitated to come close to the horses. Now they hurried forward, eager to discover what would happen next. Some walked hand in hand. Others rolled forward in their wheelchairs with bright eyes. The caregivers watched with wide smiles, relieved and amazed at how much the children had opened up. Atlas stood at the far end of the stable, his elegant posture calm and welcoming. Liam, who had earlier stepped back every time a horse moved, now looked at him with interest instead of fear. He stayed close to Miss Elena, but there was a newfound confidence in the way he held himself. Every time Atlas glanced his way, Liam seemed to understand that the horse was offering him gentle reassurance. Clara invited the children to gather near Atlas for a calming exercise. She explained that horses often respond to human emotions, and when people are calm, horses feel relaxed too. She showed them how to breathe slowly and quietly. The children mimicked her movements, taking soft breaths in and out. Surprisingly, the horses also reacted. Atlas lowered his head again, almost to the ground, a sign that he felt perfectly safe. Liam watched this with fascination. Seeing the horse respond to the group's breathing made him curious. He stood a little closer and matched his breaths with Clara's instructions. Slowly, his shoulders loosened and his eyes softened. Without being told, Atlas took one small step forward, slow, patient, and steady. Liam reached out a hand again, this time without trembling. Atlas lowered his head into Liam's hand with quiet acceptance. The stable staff noticed the moment with admiration. Clara whispered to Miss Elena, "He trusts Liam." Miss Elena smiled with emotion, realizing how important that small interaction was for the boy. Nearby, Rowan was happily surrounded by a group of children who had grown brave enough to touch, brush, and even talk to him as if he understood every word. Rowan turned his head gently from side to side, letting each child feel seen. Aaron was among them. Earlier, he had only watched from the side, unsure if he wanted to try touching a horse. But after grooming Rowan, something inside him had changed. Now he stood close enough that Rowan could smell his hair. Aaron raised his hand again, gently brushing the horse's neck with his fingers. He didn't speak, but his expression held a quiet feeling of trust. Mira, still full of excitement, lifted her hand toward Rowan once more. He understood her immediately and lowered his head so she could stroke his forehead. Thomas knelt beside her, describing the different parts of the horse she was touching. Mira listened with deep interest, feeling a sense of connection she had never felt before. she whispered softly. "He's my friend." And Rowan responded by nudging her hand gently, as if agreeing. In another corner, Tia continued sketching the horses, but now her drawings looked different. Her lines were softer. Her shapes, smoother. She no longer drew the horses from far away. Instead, she sketched them close, detailed, and full of life. The children passing by admired her work, and she smiled shyly every time someone complimented her. She felt proud not only of her drawings, but of the courage she had found to sit so near the horses. As the children moved around the stable, something remarkable started happening. Connections formed that the staff had never seen before. Children who usually kept to themselves began talking to each other about their experiences. They compared the softness of the horses' coats, the warmth of their breath, and the gentle sound of their footsteps. Their voices were filled with excitement, and for a moment, their challenges seemed to fade into the background. At the far end of the stable, Luna, the tall bay mare, noticed a girl named Sophie, who had stayed quiet throughout the visit. Sophie often struggled with social interactions and usually avoided eye contact. She stood near the wall, nervously twisting her fingers, unsure whether she wanted to join the group. Luna slowly walked toward her. With careful steps, she came close, but kept enough space to avoid overwhelming the girl. Luna lowered her head and waited. Sophie watched the horse silently. Her eyes softened, and for the first time since arriving, she looked directly at the horse's face. Luna blinked, slowly, a peaceful gesture. Sophie lifted her hand halfway, then paused. Luna sensed her hesitation and leaned forward just enough for her nose to meet Sophie's fingers. Sophie froze in surprise. Then a small smile spread across her face. She touched Luna gently, whispering something no one else could hear. Luna stayed still, listening. Clara noticed and felt tears well up in her eyes. Moments like these were rare and deeply meaningful. Horses had a way of reaching children who struggled to connect in other environments. Watching Sophie open up, even a little, filled the adults with quiet gratitude. In another corner, the children practiced leading a horse using soft ropes. Of course, the staff held the main ropes for safety, but they let the children feel like they were guiding the horses themselves. Jonah, who earlier had been nervous, now walked proudly beside Willow. He giggled every time Willow looked at him, as if the horse was checking if he was doing well. Jonah stroked her neck, whispering, "Good girl," with confidence. Mira's wheelchair rolled slowly beside Rowan as Thomas guided her. She held a small rope too, pretending to lead Rowan. Her laughter echoed across the stable, and Rowan followed her with quiet steps. It looked almost like he was protecting her, careful with every move. The horses responded to the children in gentle, thoughtful ways. They lowered their heads to make themselves less intimidating. They walked slowly, so the children would not feel rushed. They paused often, waiting for the children to catch up emotionally or physically. It was as though the horses carried the children's worries on their backs, turning them into something light and manageable. As time passed, the atmosphere turned into a blend of joy, comfort, and discovery. Caregivers exchanged looks of amazement, whispering how they had never seen the children so relaxed or expressive. Many of the kids were doing things they normally hesitated to do, making eye contact, initiating touch, laughing openly, trying new activities, and talking voluntarily. Even Clara and Thomas felt something unforgettable growing in the stable. They had always known horses could be calming, but today they witnessed something deeper, an emotional connection that went beyond simple interaction. It felt like the horses chose to play a healing role, sensing exactly what each child needed most. When the activity time ended, the children gathered again, but this time their faces radiated warmth. They chatted excitedly, shared their favorite moments, and kept glancing back at the horses as if they didn't want to leave their side. The horses remained close, watching the children with expressions almost like affection. The children were not the same as when they first walked into the stable. Some had found courage. Some had found joy. Some had found calmness. Others had found a friend in the gentle giants who stood before them. What happened that afternoon left an imprint not only on the children's hearts but also on the hearts of everyone who witnessed it. The transformation was real. And it was beautiful proof that kindness, even from quiet animals, could create moments that stayed with people forever. As the sun began to lower in the sky, a soft golden glow filled the stable. The day had passed more quickly than anyone expected. What felt like only a short moment had actually been many hours, filled with small miracles, warm smiles, and gentle connections. The children, who had once stepped into the stable with unsure steps and nervous eyes, now moved around with confidence and joy, as if they had always belonged there among the horses. Clara, Thomas, and the other staff members quietly prepared for the last part of the visit. They wanted to make sure the ending was just as special as every moment before it. The children were gathered once more in the center of the stable, where they had earlier brushed and fed the horses. But now, instead of nervous excitement, the air was filled with a peaceful happiness. Many of the children stood close to the horses they had bonded with. Rowan stood near Mira, lowering his head gently beside her wheelchair, as if he didn't want the day to end either. Atlas stayed near Liam, watching him with kind eyes. Willow, Luna, and the other horses remained calm and steady, allowing the children to approach freely. The caregivers looked around, amazed by the change. Some had tears in their eyes. They had seen transformations happen right in front of them. Children who rarely smiled were now laughing brightly. Children who usually stayed quiet had spoken openly to the horses or to each other. Even the shyest ones had stepped out of their comfort zones because they felt safe and understood. Clara stepped forward with a warm smile. She told the children how proud she was of them, how gently they had treated the horses, and how much the horses enjoyed their company. The children listened closely, many of them gently stroking the horses' necks or muzzles as she spoke. Then Clara shared something that surprised everyone. She explained that the horses seemed especially calm and connected that day, more than they normally were. She believed the animals could sense the children's unique hearts, emotions, and quiet strength. Horses understand feelings, she said softly. They don't speak with words, but they speak with kindness. The children listened with wide eyes, feeling a special sense of pride. For many of them, it was rare to feel completely accepted, just as they were. But here, among the horses, acceptance came naturally and silently. To end the visit, each child was given a small keepsake, a soft ribbon with the name of the stable and a picture of a horse on it. Some children tied it around their wrist, others held it against their chest like a precious treasure. Mira asked if she could tie hers to her wheelchair so she would never forget the day. The staff happily helped her attach it to the armrest. Aaron held his ribbon quietly, rubbing the smooth fabric between his fingers. He looked up at Rowan, who seemed to smile at him in his own hoarse way. Aaron leaned forward and rested his forehead gently against Rowan's neck for a brief moment. It was a small gesture, but it showed a trust that earlier seemed impossible. Sophie, the girl who had stayed quiet at the beginning, now stood confidently beside Luna. She brushed the horse's cheek with her fingers and whispered something softly. Luna blinked slowly, showing she felt the calm connection. Jonah couldn't stop talking about Willow. He told everyone how brave he felt when he walked beside her, and how soft her coat was, and how kind her eyes were. Willow flicked her ears and seemed to listen to him happily. Liam stood close to Atlas, gently touching the horse's mane. He looked up at Miss Elena with a proud smile. He had overcome his fear, step by step, supported by calm eyes and slow breaths. Atlas lowered his head until his nose touched Liam's shoulder, almost like a gentle hug. Liam closed his eyes briefly, soaking in the moment. As the time came for the children to leave, the horses remained near the stable doors, as if they were giving the children a special farewell. The children waved at them, some blowing kisses, others waving both hands with excitement. The horses reacted with soft snorts, lowered heads, and quiet steps movements that looked like their own version of waving goodbye. When the children boarded the bus, they were full of stories. The bus was louder now, filled with happy voices instead of nervous ones. Some children described the feeling of brushing a horse for the first time. Others talked about how warm the horse's breath felt on their hands. Some tried to imitate the gentle noises the horses made, making everyone laugh. Mira held her ribbon tightly, smiling non-stop. Aaron sat quietly but peaceful, holding his ribbon in both hands. Liam leaned against the window, thinking about Atlas and replaying every moment in his mind. Sophie rested her hand over her chest, remembering how Luna made her feel calm and understood. Miss Elena and the other teachers exchanged looks of happiness. They talked about the breakthroughs they had seen, moments that were small on the outside, but huge on the inside. They agreed that the visit had touched the children in ways more powerful than they expected. It wasn't just a fun outing. It was a healing experience. Back at the stable, the staff cleaned up slowly, still talking about the day. They couldn't stop smiling. Clara told the team how proud she was, not only of the staff, but of the horses. They gave something special today, she said. Something gentle and real. Thomas nodded. He looked at Rowan, who was chewing hay peacefully, and at Atlas, who stood quietly with his head lowered. They knew, he said simply. They understood the children in their own way. Word about the magical visit spread quickly in the following days. Parents shared stories, teachers wrote letters of thanks, and even people in nearby towns heard about the horses' kindness. Many were touched by the idea that animals could show such deep empathy without needing any words. Because the visit had gone so wonderfully, Clara decided to create a special program at the stable. It would be a monthly event designed specifically for children with special needs. She wanted more children to experience the same comfort, joy, and gentle magic that had filled the stable that day. The staff agreed immediately, knowing the horses would welcome the chance to spread more quiet kindness. The first group of children who visited would always be remembered as the ones who started something beautiful. Their courage, smiles, and open hearts had shown the world that connections could form in the simplest ways, through soft breaths, gentle touches, and silent understanding. Long after the visit ended, the memory remained. The children remembered the horses with warm hearts. The caregivers remembered the transformations they witnessed. And the horses, in their own quiet way, seemed to remember the children too. That day became a story that people shared again and again, a true story of kindness, trust, and the gentle bond between humans and animals. A story of big horses with even bigger hearts. A story that reminded everyone that kindness comes in many forms. Sometimes with hooves and soft brown eyes. And it all began on a day when the Royal Guard horses showed touching kindness to the special needs visitors who needed it most.